Welcome back to our latest explainer. Today, we're looking into a truly harrowing case of domestic violence that recently came out of Dehradun. Fair warning, the details emerging from this police complaint are, well, they're really tough to hear. But as we go through the facts reported by NDTV, we've got to look at this not just as some isolated family dispute. No, we need to view this through a strict human rights lens. We're going to break down exactly what happened, how it was kept hidden, and what it actually tells us about broader, systemic issues regarding physical safety and fundamental human freedoms.
All right, let's dive right in. I want to anchor our entire explainer on this incredibly powerful quote from the victim's father, Mr. Bahugana. This statement was right there in his formal police complaint, and it perfectly frames what we're dealing with today, a profound, absolute loss of fundamental human rights. You know, when we talk about human rights, we usually picture international conflicts or massive political movements, right? But as this quote painfully reminds us, the complete deprivation of basic human dignity, it can happen right behind closed doors, inside a family home.
Section 1. The Dehradun Horror, Deprivation of Safety.
So, looking at the specific facts outlined in the police complaint filed at the Selakui police station, we are seeing a total deprivation of physical safety and freedom. The reality of this physical confinement is just shocking. The victim was essentially locked inside a single room and a restroom by her husband, Rahul Kanduri, and his parents. Her husband was actually employed away in Delhi, leaving her living with her in-laws, where she essentially became a prisoner in her own home. And the absolutely crucial point here is this number 10. 10 agonizing months. I mean, this wasn't just a sudden one-off incident of violence. No, this highlights the severe, prolonged, and incredibly calculated nature of this human rights abuse. For almost an entire year, day and night, this woman was allegedly subjected to constant physical abuse and a total restriction of movement.
Section 2. 10 months of isolation, cutting off the world. Now, a major factor in extreme cases of domestic violence is the deliberate isolation of the victim from the outside world. If we walk through this timeline, the escalation is just staggering. Okay, so just 2 years ago, she was married to Rahul Kanduri. Fast forward a bit to February 2025, and she gives birth to twins. But then, by July of that exact same year, when those babies were literally just 5 months old, she's confined to that single room and toilet. It wasn't until June 2026, roughly 10 whole months later, that a police complaint was finally registered at the Selakui police station. So a marriage and the birth of newborn twins rapidly devolved into this complete forced isolation.
What's really chilling is how the abusers used everyday mundanity as a shield to hide their crimes. Just contrast the excuses the in-laws repeatedly gave over the phone whenever the victim's parents tried to check on her. They'd casually say things like, "Oh, she's sleeping," or "she's taking a bath." Compare that to the brutal reality alleged in the complaint. She was locked inside a room or restroom from 9 or 10 o'clock every single morning. The in-laws used intense psychological isolation tactics to keep the victim completely hidden. She was denied all visits, all phone calls with her family. And even worse, the grandparents were entirely barred from seeing their new twin grandchildren. Every single time the victim's parents pushed to visit, they were brushed off and told to wait 15 days. And you know what the most manipulative tactic of all was? The in-laws actually accused the victim's parents of trying to ruin their daughter's home. That is a textbook psychological mechanism. It traps the victim in silence and forces her own family to second-guess their interventions.
Section 3. Depriving dignity, physical realities.
Transitioning to the horrifying physical realities of the abuse, the severe deprivation extended to the most basic sustenance. According to her father, she was given only raw rice, onions, and chilies to eat. Think about that for a second. This wasn't just neglect. This was an active, deliberate denial of basic nourishment. It really reinforces her father's earlier statement about the complete and total loss of human dignity. Now, the physical torture inflicted by the husband and his parents, as alleged in the complaint, is incredibly difficult to process. But we really need to confront it to understand the true severity of this crime. She was allegedly beaten with drain pipes, rods, chairs, and floor wipers. The complaint states she was assaulted in her private parts with bottles and sticks. They violently pulled the hair from her head, literally leaving her scalp bare. And when you couple all of that with constant death threats, well, her father noted that this environment has understandably had a severe, devastating impact on his daughter's mental health.
Section 4. Systemic crisis, a wider pattern.
So, while the details of the Dehradun case are uniquely horrific,
Zooming out reveals that this is, unfortunately, not just an isolated incident. What's deeply troubling is how pervasive this systemic issue really is. Just look at the related headlines reported by NDTV right alongside this story. Over in Mumbai, a man was arrested for keeping his wife in a torturous rooster position for 4 straight hours before she finally escaped. In Jodhpur, a horrific case involving years of gang rape and blackmail ended in the tragic suicide of 2 sisters. And right at the highest legal level, the Supreme Court recently had to flat-out deny bail in another domestic violence case, reminding the perpetrators of basic legal and human boundaries. And that brings us to this incredibly stark observation from the Supreme Court. Can't treat wife like animal. It's so blunt, isn't it? But it highlights the desperate, urgent need for human rights advocacy within the domestic sphere. It really hammers home that treating women with basic dignity isn't just some moral suggestion. It is a fundamental human right backed by vital legal protections. Laws like the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act exist for this exact reason, to provide survivors with actual legal recourse, protection orders, and a clear pathway out of abuse. I want to leave you with one final provocative thought here. The abusers hid 10 months of unimaginable torture by telling the parents that checking on their daughter would be ruining her home. So we have to ask ourselves, how many other victims are hidden behind this exact same cultural excuse? This is exactly why community awareness is so absolutely urgent. When communication gets cut off, we cannot just shrug and accept the excuses. We've got to actively utilize reporting mechanisms and direct victims to essential support services. Things like national domestic abuse helplines, local NGOs, and immediate police intervention that help survivors escape violent environments safely. The cost of looking away is simply way too high. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.